I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem! I know a lot of fucking idiots who think a lot of shit is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe. But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Don Rickles on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. One of the most legendary talk show guests ever, I would say, is Don Rickles. My personal favorite is Norm Macdonald. We did the Norm Macdonald versus Conan O'Brien episode. But I think people of a different generation would probably argue with me and say that Rickles on Carson is the best that it got. Because they just, similar to Norm and Conan, they just had a chemistry together. They got each other. And, Carson was kind of a rare guy. And maybe I say rare because, like when I would see Rickles on like Kimmel and Conan and even Letterman, they were almost more in awe of Rickles. Whereas Johnny and Rickles were peers. And, I don't know if Carson had any legitimate friends, but they were as close to friends as Carson got to anyone. So we will be going through some of the best appearances that Rickles had on the Tonight Show back in the day. But first, I do want to remind you guys to go to blindmike.net. That is where you can get all of our links. If you want to support the show for free, on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube. We got to get those YouTube numbers cooking now because that's that's the big thing in podcasting these days. So subscribe to the YouTube for God's sake. And if you want to, throw a few bucks behind the show, then you're welcome to visit the Patreon as well. We do bonus episodes there, and you also get these episodes that you're listening to for free. You get them a week early on the Patreon. So if that's worth it to you, make sure you do it. And the easiest way to find all of those links is blindmike.net. And another thing, interesting note I had about Rickles going through a lot of these clips is I think Don Rickles might be the best example ever of what funny people can get away with versus unfunny people. And I don't even mean that in the way you think. I think a lot of people would say that in regards to him doing, racial humor and things like that. I mean more, he does have a very old-timey, like Catskills kind of schmaltzy vibe to him, and there are little ticks that he... Anyway, little things that he does, where if a hack was doing those, you would jump all over him and be like, whoa, what the fuck is he doing? But Rickles just has a way about him where you kind of ignore those little things. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, and like to bring up someone more current, like Joe DeRosa does that, but he does it on purpose.
Well, yeah, guys that do it now are almost paying tribute to Rickles. Like that was his thing, a throwaway line. They go, well, anyway.
Yeah.
But folks.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing is like when DeRosa does it, you are, because I find DeRosa to be a funny guy, and you're aware he's kind of doing it in homage of Rickles. Whereas some people, I think when that sort of stuff becomes hack is when the people don't realize they're doing it. They don't realize they're just copying Rickles or someone like that.
Right. But yeah, every time DeRosa is just like, folks, it just kills me, and that's all I think of is like this time period.
Yeah. Yeah, and, Rickles also, I'm sure we'll do eventually just a full episode about the life of Don Rickles, but I figured the last couple weeks we've referenced him. That also shows you how long and amazing Rickles' career was that in 2 back-to-back weeks talking about Lucille Ball and Artie Lang, Don Rickles came up.
Right.
And we also talked about Rickles a good amount in the roasts episode that we did. But I felt Rickles warranted a full episode. I wasn't ready to do the life of Don Rickles yet. And someone suggested to me that, hey, why don't you do Rickles on Carson the way you did Norm on Conan? And I was like, I think that's perfect because there's so much there. And he really is. There's other guys that were on Carson. I know, like, I think Charles Grodin and Carson kind of had a thing. That's probably more with Letterman. But there were guests, like I like watching old Rodney clips on Carson and everything, but I can't think of anyone that lived up to Rickles, really. You know, like we talked about Joan Rivers on Carson, but that was there was like controversy there. I'm talking about just as a guest. I don't link anyone to Carson the way I do Rickles. I can't think of who would even be second in line, really. A lot of people say Bob Hope, and then I'll find videos that Carson hated Bob Hope, which I find hilarious.
Right. Because, I mean, we'll see later on in this episode, Rickles does stuff that I think typically would end relationships with Johnny Carson.
Yeah, but Rickles, there's a few guys that were able to get away with it the same way that Chris Rock went on Letterman and started making jokes about Letterman getting in trouble.
Right.
Like, you know, some new comic couldn't do that, but Chris Rock, Dave respects.
Right.
So we'll start, by the way, with a few clips. I think it's you know, very heavy in the early clips, not as much in the later ones, so we get past it. But it's interesting to hear Rickles credit someone for his career as much as he does Johnny. You know, there were always like Rickles, you know, at the end of a roast would say, yeah, but serious, we love you. But with Carson, it felt more legitimate because he does really respect what Johnny was able to do for his career. What's interesting about the Tonight Show, if you're looking for old clips, is the early years of Johnny's Tonight Show in the 1960s. You know, they had no real foresight, I guess, for what technology would be. And those episodes are just gone. They've like recorded over them or got rid of them or something. Like most of those 1960s Carson episodes don't exist anymore. So I can't, if anyone is able to find Rickles' first ever appearance on there, send it to me and we'll play it at another point. But unfortunately, I couldn't find that in existence anywhere. But we do have some early stuff. And I think we're starting with the roast, right?
Yep, the Friars roast.
Yeah, so this is a Friars Club roast that Rickles was a part of. And this is while Johnny was still in New York. The mayor of New York was there. So I think this is right before Johnny left New York for Los Angeles. And this is some of Rickles' roast here.
Once in a while, they'd move your body or they're going to throw dirt on you. It's a great treat to have Ed Sullivan being wheeled in here to be with you tonight. Johnny, I'd like to say from the bottom of my heart, nobody likes you. You're a vicious guy. I hope you go back to Nebraska and get a fungus all over your body. His mother was supposed to be here tonight, but the pickup broke down. He's out on the highway with his father going, "Oh, Johnny loves us." Isn't this fun, Ed? You're staying up late?
I think another thing Rickles is a great example of is timing, like, and how important timing is when it comes to, you know, just delivering a punchline or something. Because there are things he does that if you watch every clip of Don Rickles, you'll see some repetition. Mm-hmm. But the reason it's still funny, you know, the third or fourth time you've heard him do it, is because of his timing. Like we heard, he made a similar joke to Lucille Ball, the kind of wake up sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like you're getting old. But his ability for timing and his ability to work pauses and silences is perfect. Like he's the best at it. Yeah,
right as the crowd's about, like, they just peaked laughing, they're starting to come down, he hits them with another one, and it gets even louder than the first one.
He kind of created that, like, asking someone a question, giving him about 3 seconds to answer, and going, what a bright guy. You know?
Yeah.
What else do we have from that?
We have the tribute.
Oh, yeah. So this is how he, like I said, he pays a lot of respect. We're going to hear a couple clips, I think, of him really crediting Carson for launching his career.
Isn't that a good one, huh, John? How does it feel to hear laughter instead of sitting up there at 12 o'clock at night interviewing Hunt's Hall?
What are you saying?
To say, I don't know who Hall is, but it's just a great name to use in that movie.
Yes. Yeah. No clue who that is.
Hunts Hall.
Someone from the silent film era, probably.
I kid you, Johnny, and the Honorable Mayor, I say this in jest, sir. Not that I have to apologize because you're a wonderful man. Remember Backstage when you came over to me and said, I'm the mayor. He's calling the cops and they're all sitting here drinking. I always say in my humor, it is delightful when you kid big people. The mayor is a very prominent man. Everyone on the dais is prominent. My whole life, my dad, rest his soul, he told me, Don, if you laugh at authority and you try to do it with dignity, it is fun. Johnny Carson, as Alan King mentioned, gave me my start on television with the late night shows, and I'm very grateful to him. I kid about him. I flew here from California in his honor. Not that I should win a medal for that, but it is nice to know that someone is that important to you, that you can take time out from your career to pay respect to a guy that gives his all, and when he believes in you, he certainly goes all the way. Mr. Carson has done everything in his power to further my career. I am forever grateful on behalf of my wife and my little baby girl, Mindy Beth, and my mother in Miami. You are a good... I always say that because she's in the will. But to you, John, really, may God be good to you, and I wish you what I have. People that care, and you certainly do have that. Bless you. Thanks.
Well, like, I think you'll see Rickles get like that sometimes when he's roasting people. At the end, he will, kind of get serious for a moment. I don't know if I've heard any as genuine as that, where he's bringing up, lessons he learned from his father and applying them to Johnny Carson. And it's just an interesting quote that he had there, that he said, if you make fun of people in power and you do it with dignity. He really lived up to that, because Johnny's one of the more powerful guys in Hollywood at that time. He roasted Ronald Reagan, for God's sake, the president,
right?
And we'll hear a little of him and Sinatra later, but he would make mob jokes to Sinatra. No one was getting away with that in the 60s and 70s.
No, especially because Sinatra was so close to the Lucchese family, like in weddings and shit and performing and stuff.
And Rickles would just say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he really did. I think that is something we've lost today. And we talked about it with Mort Saul. One of the great things we learned about Mort Saul was that he would tell people, even people on his side politically, high-ranking Democrats, he would say, I'm the, what was the phrase? The loyal opposition. I'm against you because you are in power. I'm essentially supposed to keep you in check. And that's kind of the code that Rickles lived by also.
Right.
I think the next clip is with Johnny's brother, right? Dick Carson.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is like I said, a rare clip. I apologize for the sound quality. A rare Carson clip from the 60s. I did not know this, and maybe it's worth looking more into. Because I have not heard much about Dick Carson. I didn't really know Johnny had a brother that was in show business. So I'll look more into that, see if there's anything with their relationship. But
I'm sure there was.
I'm sure there's a falling out, and Johnny never spoke to him. But Dick Carson directed The Tonight Show for Johnny's first, I think, 7 years. That Johnny was there, and then Dick left to do a show that was not particularly successful with Don Rickles over on ABC. But this is Rickles and Dick Carson on back in the day.
I've often wondered why people choose in their career to step down. When you've got a good thing going here. It's comfortable. We're on every night. This Jimmy's going on, prime time. My own brother. You see what happened? He's only been with you a couple of weeks, and already he's turning.
Well, I give him kicks. I don't come up with a salami sandwich and a Mac.
Hey, really? Are you salami sandwich and a Mac? Are you looking forward to it, really?
Very much so, yeah. Going out next week, and we're going to get together with Pat McCormick.
Yeah, he's got the big old
and I know
working on the
Pat's got
show.
lots of ideas already in line for Don.
You'll be good for Don, really.
And your brother will be one of our guests, which we're thrilled about, because many people ask me, Johnny Carson was the first guy to put me on nighttime television, which is a fact. And I'm very proud to have Johnny as one of our guests. I'm sure Dick is too. It'll be a lot of fun.
I also had passage on the Andre door yet. Big deal. So we'll be right back after words from your local station.
You can also tell how uncomfortable Johnny is with compliments.
I know. He hates
does
it.
not like it.
I prefer you roasting me the entire time you're up here.
Another just an interesting thing about comedy in general, I think, and why it's so silly to go back and find old tweets or old clips of people and try to hold their feet to the fire and have them answer for something they said years ago. Because comedy isn't supposed to hold up. Like when Rickles there says a salami sandwich and a map, I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about.
No clue.
I'm sure it was funny for the time, but I don't know what the hell he meant. But there's another interesting angle to that, which is something that, to reference Chris Rock again, Chris Rock has a joke where he says, if you're white, the sky's the limit. And if you're black, the limit's the sky. And that gets a big laugh. And Joe List and Louis C.K. were talking about that. And because Louis is friends with Chris Rock. And Joe List was like, what does that mean? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it gets a laugh, but I don't understand it. And so they called Chris Rock and asked him. And he said, it doesn't mean anything. It's just the timing works. People get what I'm going for. So the timing works. And one thing that I would see, like Rickles, Carson would always call Rickles out for this, and no one else did. At least not that I've seen. Is Rickles would say something like that, like I just mentioned, the salami and maps or whatever the fuck he said. Carson would call him out for that and say, "What do you mean by that?" And there's one clip where Rickles goes, I don't know, but they're laughing. Isn't that what you wanted? And it's like, that's great when you've perfected. You could just say nonsense. But if you do it with the right timing, I'm sure that sounds like I'm insulting Rickles, but I'm not. It's actually a masterful talent, I think.
Oh, for sure. It's hard enough to get laughs with words.
Yeah, with words that make coherent sense.
Right. I can't even make my example.
All right, now we're getting into the better stuff here. Better sound quality. The peak Tonight Show.
The quote better.
Yeah. What do we got?
11 years.
So Carson was big on anniversaries. Like I said, for a guy that doesn't love compliments, half the shows I found were anniversary specials. So this is on there. So this is still early 70s. This is probably 72, I think.
These kind of nights, as Bert has said, and Buddy has said, and Ed talked to you briefly, with accolades of, like 11 years, and it makes my starting on the Tonight Show with you. Yeah. It's like everybody's back there saying, "Gee, you got to do good, and you got to wish Johnny luck, what have you, which we all do, But I, observing in the back, say from the bottom of my heart, Johnny, you're a very wealthy man.
Remember what happened last time you said that?
I know that, but
Yes.
I don't mean it in that sense. The good Lord has blessed you and your family and your lovely wife. And thank you so much, Bert. Bert is lonely. But, it's a very difficult thing when Burt Reynolds, who's a very glib guy, Buddy Hackett, one of our great comedy minds, and Ed McMahon, who's at the end of the couch, annoying Buddy now saying, "Can't you use me in Vegas?" Ed knows and I know, Johnny. Yes. You don't have a friend. You have me, John, because I still feel you're hot in the business.
I always loved when the guests would interact with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it kind of, when I was old enough to be watching like talk shows and so, you didn't have that as much, where the first guest would slide down the couch and the next guy would come out.
Yeah.
Like that Norm and Courtney Thorne Smith clip.
Right. I was going to say, it was like, I caught the end of that.
Yeah. It didn't happen as much in like the 2000s, say. But it's such an interesting thing because and now, you know what? Now it doesn't really matter either. because of the internet and everything, the world is so small where you will see podcasts with a couple different celebrities just talking about the old days or whatever. In the 70s, there's no other setting where you would see Burt Reynolds laughing his ass off at Don Rickles.
Right.
And Rickles like making fun of this like young, handsome sex symbol, you know, looking like Don Rickles. Like there weren't a lot of opportunities for that.
Right.
And like you hear him busting Ed's balls there, which was always fun. And I think in one of the roasts he called Ed a wino, which is hilarious. Ed did enjoy the drink, is my understanding. But there was also in the documentary about Rickles, Mr. Warmth. Ed McMahon says that Don would usually make a big bit of coming out and only paying attention to Ed. Like you would make a big show of hugging Ed and everything and just ignoring Johnny, which is a hilarious move.
Mr. Warmth.
Which is a name, by the way, that Carson created.
He calls him that every time he introduced him.
Yeah. Milton Berle dubbed Rickles, what was it? The Merchant of Venom, I think is the nickname he got from Milton Berle. But Rickles said his favorite nickname or moniker that anyone gave him was Mr. Warmth. I found like the story, the origin of that name. I couldn't find the clip that it comes from. But essentially it's Rickles kind of comparing his style of comedy to being a bullfighter. And then they just started talking about that song, the bullfighter song that became like his theme song. Like that would play every time he walked out on the Tonight Show, and then it even was the song when he would walk out on stage after that. So that's where that theme song comes from, and also just because of Rickles' sunny disposition, Carson referred to him as Mr. Warmth, and Rickles said that was his favorite name of any that he was given over the years.
It sounds inviting, and then you realize why he's called that. It's sarcasm. Next we have them talking about how they met.
Oh yeah, let's hear a little more about the old, because it seems like in the 60s, you know, kind of coming up in New York, they were genuinely friends. At least Rickles tells stories of like hanging with Ed McMahon and Johnny back in the day.
What were you doing 11 years ago? 11 years ago, I was in the lounge in the Sahara Hotel. And I owe that to a guy called Stan Irwin and my manager, Joe Scandori. And I was in the lounge, and we used to do a show at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's the first time I met you, and you sat at the far bar. Now, truth? Now, they think I'm kidding.
We had met before in New York, before you got to Sahara.
That's right, when you had the daytime show, hit the clock, win a cookie. Hit the dime, hit the buzzer. What was that dumb show you had?
Well, it was called Do You Trust Your Wife?
You heard the crowd?
Yeah, well...
Everybody watched.
Kept me going for 4 years.
It sure did. And meanwhile, I was up in Connecticut at the Red Lobster watching a lobster come off the table going, George, that I'm Jewish. Anyway, folks, segueing. 11 years ago, I was in the lounge, and I'll never forget when I met you. And you sat at the back lounge, and I got so nervous, as I am tonight. For the first time in the history of the Tonight Show, I say with honesty, I am nervous. Nervous, not in the sense of worrying about my security as a performer, but because it's like an anniversary, a special night. I'm being very sincere about this. And I must say to you, Johnny, on behalf of my family and myself and all your fans, and this sounds like like we said in the Army,
yes, I know.
Making the nose go purple. The guy went, don't go purple. But what I'm saying to you is, I thank you for making my family and yours truly get a little bit up the ladder, and I appreciate it.
Well,
God
you didn't
bless.
have to say that.
Don, please shut up.
I think it's the last time we have to hear Rickles thank Carson for a little while. So.
Until I think the last clip.
Yeah. But there was another kind of interesting little throwaway thing in there too, where you hear Rickles give the, but anyway, and then you ever so slightly hear Carson go, but anyway, like we get it, Don. And that's what I was referring to, where Carson's the one guy to like call out his shtick, kind of.
We got it. We see through you.
Yeah. But there's a little bit of I think what you were alluding to, Craig, is first of all, he was making fun of the success of his daytime show, but also I think there was a little poking fun at Johnny's success with relationships, which is something that Rickles and only a handful of others could really get away with.
Yeah. Yep. Next we have Don hosting with someone we appreciate very much.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, if you subscribe to the Patreon, you'll know why this was a sentimental moment for me.
Or if you're watching right now above your shoulder.
I did, yes, that's right. I did want to include a couple clips from when Don would host. I don't know how often, I don't know if that's a Google search away or not. I don't know if that information is out there. But I don't know how many times Rickles hosted the Tonight Show. I don't think it was as many as like Newhart or Joan or any of those guys. Shandling, I know, hosted a lot. So I was interested, but I knew he did host, and I was like, how would Don be at that? Because he doesn't seem like the typical talk show guy. He doesn't seem interested in hearing from other people. And I quickly realized, he does it exactly like Don Rickles would. That makes sense. He doesn't try and become the Tonight Show. He made the Tonight Show his own thing when he hosted.
From a quick Google search, it's not giving me an answer, but he appeared on the show over 100 times.
Well, yeah, that I know. But yeah, I'm not sure how often he hosted, but there were at least a few different appearances that I found. So this is him with the great Jack Klugman. And if you want to hear more about Jack Klugman, go to the Patreon and watch Quincy with us. But here's a little taste.
I love you.
You look terrific.
I kiss your hand, I kiss your toes, whatever you want. What do you want, sir?
Well,
don't
we're on
bring
the
me too
air,
much.
but I would never zing you. May I say something as a friend?
Anything you want.
Think about a nose job.
I had one.
Did you really?
No, I used to have a ball at the end of my nose like Carl Malden. I had to remove it.
Hey, listen, Joe Scandori.
Talk to him, I talk to the wall.
No, you know, we got to get to the main stuff. What are we going to talk about? Your truck driver suit?
You make up my nose. Did you mention my nose? You mentioned my nose. I told you about my nose.
No need for me to get hot, is there? Turned on me like Hitler was my son.
So, yeah, like he would just roast the guy. I think he would have people on that he liked. Like Klugman was in, I know he was on a couple of the Dean Martin roasts, so I think he was kind of in that circle. And his interviewing style, at least based on that Klugman interview, seemed just like Don Rickles. He's just going to bust his balls, more or less. And he added something very interesting, I thought. I'd never heard much about this until, again, in that Mr. Warmth documentary that I think was on HBO originally. Scorsese's in it. And he's telling a story about Rickles going up to a kid in the audience when he was hosting the Tonight Show and asking how old he was. And the kid answering, and Rickles giving him a little smack and saying, "Don't lie to me." And Scorsese's like, he's doing this on television. It's crazy. But there's another taste. Because I was like, so is Rickles just going to do a monologue where he's joking about the news of the day? That doesn't feel like Rickles. And he certainly did not do that. This is a taste of what he would do.
Lovely lady. Could you stand here? Could you stand?
She knows.
Do you have some sort of illness? You're a stunning lady. Are you Jamaican?
Half.
Half Jamaican? What's the other half?
Black.
Black. Perfect for my needs. You can drink rum and you can be my live-in help. What's your name, dear?
Holly McGee.
Holly McGee. You don't mind my kidding with you, do you, Holly?
No.
Don't be nervous. No. Ever since Roots, they do what they want. I don't understand. Give Holly a nice hand. She was shaking her.
She did not like that.
Well, but he is. I mean, it's crazy to go up to someone and just say that
Yes.
unprovoked. But there is, I think you see the charm that Rickles has there, and like why he would not just get away with that, but it became like an honor. You would want to meet Rickles and have him shit on you. That was a dream. And I think you see a little bit of his charm there, where he's balancing these, horribly racially charged jokes
That was brutal.
with like making sure she's comfortable and kind of apologizing. It's a balancing act that he does better than anyone, I think.
Yeah, I was stunned when I heard that though, because you're like, now you'd be like, oh my god.
That's the interesting thing that I said when Rickles died is, and it's the same with guys like, Patrice and Greg Giraldo and things like that. People will celebrate what a genius he was. And, I talked about this a little with Norman Lear, who's still alive. But they'll celebrate what a genius he was. While if any of their, classic material premiered today, they'd be in prison.
Right.
they'd be chased through the streets. It wouldn't be allowed. It's interesting how like certain humor was accepted then and isn't accepted now. But I don't know. Rickles is the best at balancing it, I guess is my point.
Yeah, and I think he knew she didn't like it too right at the end. He's like, shit.
Oh, thank you for... But yeah, that's the thing is he was a nice man. You could tell he was a nice man because he didn't want to. There are a lot of comedians, and I'm not even saying it's right or wrong, but there are a lot of comedians who would be, maybe just as funny as Rickles in that situation. Mm-hmm. But then be like, oh, you dumb bitch. What are you going to be sensitive about it? You know what I mean? Where it's like there is, tact to it a lot of the time. And that's why Rickles was so good and is so beloved, because I think he knew how to walk that line a little bit. He's saying these crazy offensive things, but also cares about how she's reacting to it.
Right.
And just one other note about that clip is just the real reason obviously I thought it was very funny, but the real reason I pulled it is just that I think it's so smart of Rickles. And I don't know, I don't know enough about if this would be on the advice of Johnny or Peter LaSalle or just completely on his own. But I think it's so smart of Rickles to say like, hey, I'm not going to joke about the news of the day the way Johnny does. I'm Don Rickles. So I'm going to literally walk into the crowd and just start fucking with these people. It's very smart.
Yeah. As soon as he started talking to her, she was like, God damn it.
I don't know how he guessed Jamaican right off the bat. That
was a bold move.
And he was right.
Yeah, he was right.
All right, what's next?
Next we have the cigarette box.
Well, this is classic. This is probably the number one. If you asked anyone that even peripherally watched the Tonight Show back in the day, for your top classic moments, this would probably be in there. When Bob Newhart was hosting, and Rickles and Newhart were obviously great friends. Rickles was on the show, and he's doing like this act out where he ends up kind of basically hitting the cigarette box against the table. Mm-hmm. And wackiness ensues.
It'll be wonderful. You just sit with him and hum to animals and birds all day long. Then you'll get a day job, go back to Chicago and do what you do best. Carry the 2, 5 and 5 is 6, 7 and 7 is 14, and that's $40. Okay, you can now go to Mexico. It's notes. This is not your land, you crazy cunt. You're not going to have the land. You stupid man, you're not going to have the land. It's no good. This is not your land. You take... Carson's cigarette box. Oh, I broke his box. I broke Carson's cigarette box.
So he loves that he did it. You can tell he broke Carson's cigarette box. And Newhart, by the way, it's very subtle. I don't even know if you can hear it, but Newhart just goes, "Oh no."
There's no reeling him in at that point.
So then the next night, Johnny discovers what happened.
Uh-oh.
What the hell happened to this?
Well, as long as you've seen what happened.
You know how long I've had the cigarette box on his desk?
You brought that up from New York City?
I brought this from New York. What on earth?
It happened last night.
Who?
Don Rickles.
I did not see the show
Don Rickles
last
did it last night.
Are you putting me on now?
No. Don Rickles did it last night on the show.
What the hell did he do with it? The wood is broken. That's an heirloom.
That's an heirloom.
This is what I was referring to when I said if it was like anybody else, they would have been out of his life forever.
Oh, you know what? I never even really thought of that. You're right. So here's what I think. I think Rickles genuinely broke the cigarette box by accident.
I do too.
I think now we're involved in a bit. I think we're watching. I think no one's not going to tell Carson that happened, you know.
And he's a great actor, and that was
he does a pretty good job, I think there.
Yeah.
But I think he's in on the bit. But what still makes this interesting and a great TV moment is that Carson kind of breaks. I guess breaks the fourth wall, and it's not what we usually would see on the Tonight Show. And this was at a time, I think SNL has done a bunch of stuff like this since, but this was at a time where you would never see the goings on, behind the backstage on a television set. That was something that was very foreign to people. So this was like a really cool moment that Carson came up with.
I just saw him in makeup getting ready to tape that FPO Harky, whatever. CPO Shirky.
No, I don't know. He told a joke and it didn't go well, and he got upset, and he did it over.
Is he in?
He hit it. He hit it with his hand.
Is he taping now? What?
He's taping across the hall. CPO Sharky.
Can I get over there? Can I get over there?
Dana Carvey's amazing.
Be right back. Come on. Just follow me. Is he in studio? Are they taping? Are they on the air? I don't give a damn if they're on the air.
The crowd's all fired up too. Kick his ass, Johnny.
Fuck him up.
Rickles, hold, stop the taping. Stop the taping. Somebody broke my cigarette box. Come here. I don't believe this. Come here. I do wonder, hold on.
Well, I think most people involved were in on it. I don't know if Rickles was in on this.
I don't know, man.
I can't tell. It doesn't seem like he knew Carson was coming in.
No, he had
He's pulling it off well if he was in on it.
He had like that this is funny smile on his face, and then the other guy on this show also was. It's acted.
I think the rest of the show had to be in on. Johnny's not just going to interrupt an NBC show taping. Some bit no one knows is going on.
Who's going to tell him no back then?
That's true. No one's going to tell him no. But I guess my point is, Rickles could be on it, but it doesn't seem like it.
I don't know if anyone's in on this, or if this was even I think this could have been spur of the moment.
It could be completely improvised. I would just be surprised. I don't know enough about technology in the 70s if they would just be ready to go like that to follow him into the hallway and everything,
Yeah, he's got a big corded microphone.
Yeah.
I just started the show. I picked my box up off my desk that I've had for 9 years. My box is broken. They told me you broke it on the show last night.
Well, I really...
You big dummy.
You big dummy.
And so they go back and forth for a little while. It's a great television moment. And then as Carson's about to leave, Rickles goes, Johnny Carson, everybody. And Carson goes, they know who I am. Why do you always do that? So it was a great moment. And like I said, Carson's not close to very many people, but you can tell he genuinely enjoys Rickles. Because like you said, there would just be this thing. If he didn't respect Rickles, it would just be a thing like, hey, how come Rickles was on with Newhart and then he was never on after that? It was weird. What happened?
Yeah, and Carson was like, why is this guy breaking my property?
Yeah, right.
So I Google searched. He's not in the top 10 of guest hosts. Letterman is the number 10 at 51. So it's somewhere below there somewhere.
Yeah, right. Which is still, 51 is a lot. It's crazy how many shows Johnny missed.
I know.
I guess he was on for 30 years, so it adds up.
Yeah.
But like the guy had Mondays off, and then I think at a certain point he might have had Fridays off as well.
Good for him.
It doesn't seem right, but
that's where Howard got it from.
Well, that's the thing is Howard would always bash Johnny for shit like that, and it's like, well, once you reach a certain level, those days off sound pretty good.
He's just completely gone. But I was saying in the middle of that, like Dana Carvey's amazing because you just watching
the impression.
Yeah, it's just the mannerisms. Everything was just spot on, and you're like, yeah, I completely forgot. It was good.
Yeah. Well, hey, Rich Little played him in the movie, so he's the real master, I guess. Bizarre casting.
I forgot about that. But the next one is black jokes. If you didn't have enough of those.
Listen, again, it was a different time, all right? But these were his friends. Rickles is talking about his friends here. Keep that in mind.
Last night we did an affair together for Sammy Davis Jr. for the Friars. You had, and you still have a little bit of it, you had a very bad case of bronchitis, laryngitis.
Yeah, but how are you going to say to Sam you can't show up? They'll move into the neighborhood.
That's right.
But it's a little humor.
Carson goes, hold on, just go back. Because Carson, before he realized what he was agreeing with, goes, that's right. Pulled away.
Yeah, and then watch his smile on his face if you're watching.
An affair together for Sammy Davis Jr. for the Friars. You had, and you still have a little bit of it, you had a very bad case of bronchitis, laryngitis.
Yeah, but how are you going to say to Sam you can't show up? They'll move into the neighborhood.
That's right.
But it's a little humor. I don't want to get 4 letters. I love the black people. I have Harry Goins. Has been my black...
Been with you for a long time.
Yeah, 20... You want to buy him?
No.
Carson goes, no.
Yeah, he realizes he's got to listen to everything he's saying in this segment.
And, I wonder... I keep referencing the documentary Mr. Warmth just because I happened to rewatch it. But Sarah Silverman in that documentary says, like, Rickles, again, talking about like the charm that he has and the reason he would get away with this shit is because he would hit everyone with that stuff.
Right.
Like constant Asian jokes,
right?
Italians, Irish, Polish, Jews, which he was Jewish. There was nothing was out of bounds for Rickles, so he would hit everyone with that. I'd be curious if Sarah Silverman would say that now.
Oh, no.
Because she's become kind of a different person.
She would think he's a monster.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see people kind of talk themselves out of pretzels when they talk about guys like Don Rickles.
Right.
Because a lot of his jokes were brutal, but everyone got them. There was no way he wasn't bashing the left or the right or only this race or that race. It was pretty equal. Like he spoke to everyone in the same fashion. So that's why it was like exciting to be insulted by Don Rickles.
Right. Next we have Freddy.
This is him just ripping into Freddy de Cordova. Who there was a bit early on. Or maybe it was just genuine. He didn't know how to pronounce, but he would always say Freddy de Corvida, like mispronouncing his name. I always wondered if that was just to fuck with him or if it was by accident.
You know what I want to ask you about?
Surely. The whole idea. We're not going to sit here and stare at each other's outfits.
That's right. That is a cute outfit. As you get older, you start to go for the sports jacket and slacks.
Yeah. And as you get older, you start to go for those Mickey Mouse suits.
What are you talking about?
Well, this is the toy Johnny Carson outfits that are made in Buffalo for $2. With the thin lapels and the cute little shirts, and in the back he has a fake dickie and there's no outfit. No fly, no front, just a little... Underneath he's wearing jeans and a dead cowboy suit.
A dead cowboy suit?
Yeah, well, they don't know.
Don't try to say that. Never ask you what you mean.
We're not going to make this a question and answer.
That's
Hit the buzzer and win 2 trips to a loop.
Hold on. Go back a little, because that's what I was referring to earlier. Where Johnny's like, well, explain that. And Rickles is like, fuck you. Don't ruin my bit.
Dickie and there's no outfit. No fly, no front, just a little... Underneath he's wearing jeans and a dead cowboy suit.
A dead cowboy suit?
Yeah, well, they don't know.
Don't try to say that. Never ask you what you mean.
We're not going to make this a question and answer.
That's
Hit the buzzer and win 2 trips to a luau.
Now, you went to England and you entertained for
The royal family? Shut up, Freddy. If you knew more than me, you'd be a guest. You don't see him over here. No. I love that. Ever since he did Bozo, he's drunk with power. It's Bonzo. Bonzo. Here's your Bonzo. Bonzo this. Bonzo. Bozo. It's the same darn thing. Bonzo. I don't follow apes. I'm a Jew. We own the whole zoo.
Carson is giggling like a little girl.
Well, that's what Rickles, we heard him say it earlier. Basically, going at the people in charge. And Freddy forever was Johnny's right-hand man. He's the sort of the head honcho over there at the Tonight Show. And so, if he says something off stage, or off camera rather, Rickles is just going to call it out and be like, "Shut the fuck up, Freddy." You'd be a guest if you knew what you were talking about.
That was immediate too. You can hear it off in the distance, and immediately he's like, "I've been waiting to scream at this fucking guy."
But that's the interesting thing about Rickles is I think if Ed's the obvious thing would be to make fun of Ed McMahon, and so he would almost lift Ed up over, elevate him over Johnny, because that was also funny to him.
Right. Wow, time has gone by in this next one. This is them talking about the drinking days.
This is a clip, much later clip from late 80s, early 90s, but it's them talking about the old days.
Good to see you, John. Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Let's clear that up. I must say, both of you guys, I haven't been on in quite some time.
Yes.
Because Freddy told me you didn't want humor. And it's good to be back with you. Both of you are good friends. And why don't we're the Musketeers. Why don't we go back to the old days in the Copacabana with broads?
No, thank you. No, thanks. No.
Forget the money. Now you got a big estate. You play tennis. He gets up in the morning and goes, "Do we own anything?"
No, wait a minute. You can pick on him and you can pick on me. But just because coming up now, next month, March, I think, 14th, something like that?
Yeah, March 14th.
Is your 25th, the silver wedding anniversary, right?
Right, yeah.
Now that's important. But, sure. But you waited. You see, you didn't get married. You, 45, 40, something like that?
Don't get crazy. I wasn't 45. Why don't you make me 80, spitting up in the hall?
Well, you were close to 40. You were 40.
No, I was 38. You know it. You were there every night saying, "How old are you?"
Why did you wait to 38? Most guys
because I hung out with you and him. I didn't have a chance. Both of you were boozing.
Now, wait a minute.
Copacabana every night in New York and Danny's Hideaway. The people you don't know, these are places that are gone now. These people that drank with us are dead. It was just the three of us every night to anybody.
Yeah. That's right. Bring yourself. I want you in on this too. You were not exactly,
No, I admit
Father
that.
Flanagan in those days.
Father Flanagan.
Girls. Remember, you like girls.
Making a rabbi.
You like girls. Didn't you? I got it. Hey, over here.
Father Flanagan. The reason I love that clip is just that, by all accounts, it seemed like both Ed McMahon and Johnny were world-class boozers. Yeah. So it's just hilarious for Rickles to call them out on that. I know I've referenced it before. I guess there's really no episode, unless we just did a full-on Tonight Show episode. I don't know where we would fit it in, but there is a great clip. Go find it yourselves, I guess, of Johnny calling Ed McMahon out for being drunk during the show. Yeah, a little liquid lunch. Did we, Ed? And then it's trying to get his words out. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I have no idea where we would place that.
Yeah, unless maybe we'll do an Ed McMahon episode someday.
That'd be a perfect spot. Yeah.
All right, what's next?
This is Carson roasting Rickles.
This is a little slam that Carson gets back at Rickles. It was I shouldn't say rare, but it was rare for him to hit him with a Rickles-like zinger like this.
It's great. And then we stayed at the Regency Hotel. Have you been to Regency?
No.
Have you been to
No,
Regency?
I have
not. Now, both of you probably were at the downtown Dixie. I was at the Regency. That's a classy place.
Well, I suppose it.
When you're making love to the wife, they come right in the room and go, "Just continue. You want flowers?"
Why, did they think you were dead? We'll be right back.
He says, I'm ending on mine.
And you hear Rickles go, that was great. Almost like, hey, you finally got me with one.
Oh, he was laughing real hard.
The crowd's whooping and hollering for. But yeah, like you wouldn't hear Johnny slam him as much as Rickles would get one in on Johnny. So it was funny to hear. They think you were dead.
This is the Sinatra one.
I think this is maybe the best anecdote in talk show history. I love this story. And you guys probably know it. I know it's been repeated a million times before. But Sinatra, Carson getting Sinatra on was a big deal. Like Sinatra for his generation was, Elvis or the Beatles. Like he was the guy for a period of time. And so he does the Tonight Show and they bring Rickles out because Rickles and Sinatra were, longtime friends, like I mentioned. And so Sinatra just before they end the segment, Sinatra says, let me just get this one last story in if I could.
This is the most exciting night in the years that I've known Johnny Carson. He started me on this show. This is the most exciting night, and so help me. It's a great night. He was even nervous because he came to me and said, and I said, you are a powerhouse, and Frank, I love you.
I'm not sure that's actual Italian for the folks at home.
He just keeps kissing him on the mouth.
Can I tell a story about what this man did to me once? You may have known or heard about this. It was a true story. This was a long time ago, long before Don got married. I was eating dinner in a restaurant in New York, and I was sitting with some friends, and he came over to the table, and he said, Frank, do me a favor, will you? He said, I'm sitting with a very pretty girl, and I'm trying to make out, and he said, I told her I know you, and she really doesn't believe me. Would you stop by the table? I said, all right. I was just about finished. I was down to the espresso, and finally he went back, and I walked by the table, and I said, how are you, Don? Nice to see you. He said, can't you see I'm eating, Frank? What are you doing? I went for the whole thing. I stood with my mouth open.
It's such a great story, and it beats any of the Bill Murray stories you hear, where like Bill Murray would take a fry off someone's plate and say, "No one will ever believe you," and walk away.
Yeah, right.
I think this beats that. Like that to me is one of the best moments because it's so calculated for Don to go out of his way to ask, the biggest artist in the world at that time.
Yeah.
That women loved. Like Sinatra was dropping panties in the 50s like nobody's business.
Oh, yeah. No, like one of my favorite stories similar to that was there was a kid passed out drunk at a table at a bar, and Tom Hanks saw him and took pictures on the kid's phone. So when he opened his phone, there was just a bunch of pictures of Tom Hanks with that kid like hammering.
That's great. That's great. I never heard that one. That's good.
The pictures are out there. It's funny.
That's funny. But yeah, for Rickles to have the presence of mind. And what's also great about that is the bit is for no one.
Nobody.
Like Rickles isn't saying, hey, maybe in 15, 20 years this comes up on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
It's for nobody but him to humiliate Sinatra.
Probably the friends he was referring to were probably murderers.
Don't you see him eating Frank? Get the hell out of here. And the balls of Rickles to be certain that Sinatra is going to be okay with that.
Oh, I know.
Like obviously they had some sort of relationship, so I'm sure he had a good read on him. But like, I would just be petrified of like, he's not going to understand them. This is a joke.
They were close enough. Yeah, they were close enough that with the joke aside, that Sinatra actually did that for him.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing is it's a big ask to get, hey, Sinatra, clothes for me.
Right.
Oh, one of my favorite stories ever. I love that.
It's very funny.
So I know you guys have probably heard it, but I had to include it.
Next we have 1 year left. We're down to our last 3 clips, by the way.
Oh wow, we're flying through these. Jesus,
it's been an hour almost.
But still, it doesn't feel like it when I'm hanging out with you guys.
We're just all good pals.
So yeah, this is when, if you go back and listen to our Late Night Wars episode, this is when Johnny, right after Johnny basically came out at those NBC upfronts and said, I'm out of here.
I'm so glad.
Why? I was backstage. Everybody's packing. It's a year. They got a year yet. Everybody guys said, what are you doing? I'm getting the hell out of here before he decides to come back.
Well, where are you going to work when I leave? This is about it, you know.
Arsenio Hall is going to be at the house for dinner.
That's right, another year.
Yeah. I wish you luck, John. I think it's time you moved on.
I think so.
I'm not saying that facetiously.
I'm not retiring. I'm just stepping down as the host of this show.
You're finished.
There are other things I want to get.
Stop trying to be graceful. They asked you to get out and you're walking away.
Which is hilarious to do because it was Johnny's decision, but there were all these like stories of NBC trying to push Johnny out, trying to convince him to retire. They were worried about his age. They were worried about, that's why that Arsenio line is so great. Because like you said earlier, Craig, anyone else that probably would have chapped Johnny's ass. He hated Arsenio, like basically said, I'm coming for you, Johnny. And did for a little while, like took kind of the young chunk of Johnny's audience. And so for someone to go on and make that joke, like it had to be Rickles to get away with it.
Right.
Excuse me.
Next we have his last appearance.
Yeah. So this annoyed me. Not the appearance itself. It's always bothered me when I've gone back and watched old Tonight Show stuff. Johnny's last guest was Robin Williams, who was, massive at the time, big star, but had been on the Tonight Show before and things. But like, unless I just, maybe I had to be around to know this. You older folks, correct me if I'm wrong here. But like, Robin Williams was not synonymous with the Tonight Show.
No.
You don't think of the Tonight Show launching Robin Williams' career or anything like that. Whereas like with Rickles, and there's probably some other guys, you could argue Leno because Leno was taking over, but Johnny didn't like that. So it's not going to be him. I don't know who else it would be realistically other than Rickles. To me, it seems so obvious to make Rickles the last guest. But they didn't do that. I think this is like a month before Johnny left. So that was always weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it has nothing to do with this clip. I just wanted to say that I find it odd. I'd love to, I don't know if Johnny, I've never heard, Johnny didn't do interviews or anything really. So I don't know if he ever addressed why he would go with Robin Williams in particular. And then after that, it was like Bette Midler singing You're the Wind Beneath My Wings. Yeah. So an odd last episode. Well, technically the last episode of the Tonight Show was like a best of. It was weird. And Letterman did the same thing. But as far as guests go, those were the last two. I don't know why it wasn't Rickles, but anyways, long story short, this is Rickles' last appearance.
To me.
Now, look, we're gonna end this, in May. Now, are you gonna miss coming here?
You're leaving in May?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
That's right.
You're going?
You know that.
Oh, well, I do. And I'm going to be very depressed for about 2 minutes. Hey, I want to tell you, and then we'll get this out of the way. Thank you for 25 some odd years we met in New York.
That's right.
And I got news. God bless you. You're the best. And that's the end.
Well, you don't have to do that. Pushed you into it, didn't I? I know that.
At the end.
I know that didn't come easy for you.
You're not at the end. It's not easy for me.
I pushed you into that, didn't I?
That's right.
Which I mean, like, it's funny watching all of these in a row because we know that it came very easy for Rickles.
I know.
I was always like at the front of mind thanking Johnny. He was very respectful, kind of in the way, like when we talked about Artie Lang. The guys that Rickles influenced in this generation are pretty obvious. All the tough crowd guys,
Yep.
You can tell for sure.
Yep.
Artie's definitely another one.
Mm-hmm.
Norm to an extent, I think Norm is a culmination of a lot of different things.
He basically influenced the entire Boston comedy scene.
Really, insult comedy and roasts.
Yeah.
Like come from Don Rickles, kind of,
Right.
there's elements of just busting balls with your friends that come from Don Rickles. It's crazy the impact that he had on comedy.
And he played Mr. Potato Head.
Yes, that's certainly true. Yes, that's what most of us know him for.
He had range.
That's a hilarious. This is like what we talked about with Saget, where he's this filthy comedian, but he was also in like an iconic children's show. Mm-hmm. Rickles today, they would never allow him to be Mr. Potato Head.
I don't know. He was doing funny lines in the movie because my kids still watch it. So once in a while I'll catch one, and he's pretty funny in it.
But my point is, I think now they would say like, oh, his comedy is problematic. People aren't allowed to be multiple things. Well, and we saw that with Gilbert, kind of toward where Gilbert was in like children's movies and shit. And then kind of at the end, like because he's this dirty comic, he was persona non grata in certain places.
Where he would be saved would be that Tim Allen is the lead. So people would ignore underneath because they'd be so focused on going after him.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I forgot. Yeah. All right. So now we are at
our last clip.
Last clip. Very sad. Sorry to end on a sad note, but this is after Carson passed away. But what I think is notable here is Rickles was always Rickles. And that goes back to there's clips from his stand-up where he's like singing and, he's this old-timey kind of vaudevillian performer, but he was always that, Yeah. And so I think that comes through in this clip where there's no part of Rickles that wants to say, hey, I'm going to break character and really talk about my buddy.
Right.
He's able to deliver a sincere message, but still come off as Rickles. And that's a tremendous talent, I think.
Yeah, and you said that, sorry to end on a somber note, but in the future, if you guys are watching along and you see any footage that is a square shape and not a rectangle shape, it's not going to probably end positively. They're probably old and dead. So that's usually how it ends.
yeah, we're going to end with a guy dying very often.
But this is him on Dateline.
But what is it that you think he would want us to say about him? In other words, we all want to leave some sort of legacy. Would he want us to celebrate his sense of humor at least?
Well, believe it or not, in my opinion, I think he would say, don't do that. I think he would like us to laugh and kid around about him, but I don't think he'd like us to be serious saying he's gone and poor Johnny and he was sick and all. He wasn't that kind of guy. I think he just wanted God to put him where he's supposed to be, and that's it. And make God laugh for a while. But he certainly didn't want to fuss about him. And as I speak now, I just hope that somehow he hears me speak. And I know, Johnny, we all loved you, and wherever you are, you'll keep him going. But he was the last guy to say, hey, give me some accolades. He wasn't at all like that.
We had a reporter say tonight, I think, and rightly so, that we missed him even before he was gone. What will you miss about Johnny Carson, Don Rickles?
His soul, his caring for my wife and I, and his great spirit when I was on the show, and how he always made me look like a champion. He was something else. People in the business and the public used to say it was an event when I went on, because he himself made me look like beyond belief, and no one can replace that.
And what I love about that clip is that Don doesn't change himself at all. And I'm sure I've been guilty of this, where I think it's kind of everyone's impulse when someone passes to just use the tone of he was like a brother to me. He was the greatest man. Yeah. But Rickles talking there, his tone is literally no different than any other clip we played. He's like, I love Johnny. He did a lot for me. I don't think he'd want us to, sob over him. I think he'd want us to remember the good times. And so that was Rickles. I think he was always true to himself in the sense that you could tell he was like a sweet guy. Mm-hmm. Newhart did tell, I was listening to Newhart tell one story where his wife Newhart's wife didn't know Rickles' onstage act. And, Rickles and Newhart, longtime friends. The four of them would like double date all the time and hang out. And then the first time Mrs. Newhart went to see Rickles act, Bob warned her, like, hey, just so you know, the guy that you love so much, he might get like dirtier than usual. And I think the way Newhart tells it is the first thing he did on stage is refer to Bob Newhart's wife as a hooker in the front row. So like there were, I mean, he wasn't that guy all the time, I guess is my point. But like, I think both his charm and his venom, as Milton Berle said, come through always. Like he genuinely was himself, and Carson was one of the best at playing with that, which made Rickles one of the best talk show guests of all time.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. It's just a shame that like actors and people like this aren't actually friends anymore, because you don't get those fun stories anymore.
No. Well, I think that's why podcasting is so popular, because those guys are friends. That's our current equivalent of hearing, Ed McMahon and Carson and Rickles getting sauced together in the 60s. Now, the closest thing we have to that is comics talking about hanging out at the Comedy Cellar, the Comedy Store, like particularly in their early days when they did have time to hang out and, kind of create memories together like that. So that I do think that like helped develop podcasting, and there's a reason a lot of those fan bases have, Howard Stern style fan bases where you feel like the people,
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I don't know. Anything else to add on Rickles before we get out of here?
Go watch Toy Story. He's magical in it.
Craig, I think Craig's plugging Toy Story on this show.
It's a new movie,
And what he should be plugging is blindmike.net. Make sure you go there. Sometimes we will... I can't imagine this episode is going to be monetized, but sometimes we play videos that YouTube will allow, and you should watch those on YouTube.
Several times.
Yeah. When you finish, go to the beginning and watch it again. Or you can listen to the show, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, all the places you get podcasts. As you know, because you're listening now, you made it to the end. I imagine you can listen to this. And if you want bonus content, you should check out the Patreon and subscribe, as well as the Quincy episodes that I referenced earlier and the Blind Mike Project. Go listen to Who Are These Socials? That's me and Carl. Do that on Thursday nights at 6 on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. And you can find all of these links that I'm referring to at blindmike.net. So please do that if you'd be so kind. And you could also, if you're looking for more Toy Story plugs, you can go to verygoodshow.org. And that's where Craig talks about Pixar movies from the early 90s.
Yeah, we give a new review every week.
Yes.
But verygoodshow.org. Listen to the show for free if you like it. Maybe possibly jump on the Patreon. We thank you guys.
And I think that's going to be it for this week. Next week, if you guys don't know, I believe, big episode, Kirk Minahan will be on talking Dennis Miller. So stay tuned for that. And we'll talk to you guys next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.